Hello, and welcome to Living a Graceful Life. I'm Denise Medved, your host, and I'm also the creator and founder of the Ageless Grace Brain Health Program worldwide. It's not only for adults or for aging adults who are concerned about their brain health, it's also for children. And that brings us to the topic of our show tonight and our guest tonight. The name of our episode is Harmony in the Family, and we're here to remind you that it's never too late to begin making choices to create the life that you want to create. Regardless of your age, your location, your income, your job, regardless of whether you're the head of the family, a member of the family, or if you're even the child of the family, you can make choices to improve the quality of your life by inviting in more grace. So I welcome at this episode Emmalou Penrod, who is a family life expert, and also she's a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and a retired school teacher. So she knows a lot about family life and how to raise the quality of that family life. Welcome, Emmalou. I'm so happy to have you here with us.
Well, thank you, Denise. I'm so honored to be here, and I'm thrilled with how your show and how you talk about brain health, and it's never too late. There is some overlap there in what we do. I Some families feel that there have been major disruptions and they wonder if the family can make it, and I have that same it's never too late. Changes can be made. There can be healing. And I also love what you say about brain health. And that is critical in families too. Now, the airlines really taught us something when they said put your own oxygen mask on first. And that's what parents need to do. The instinct is take care of my children first. I've got to look out for my children before myself. And the reverse is actually true. If When you become a better person, you become a better parent. You can't pour from an empty cup. So I love what you're teaching them about taking care of their physical and mental and emotional well-being. And then they're in a better position to help their children.
Absolutely. That's true for all of us, whatever we do. Is that I love that metaphor of the oxygen mask coming down. I've always liked that because it's true. I have definitely overextended myself in my life for my mom, who died of Alzheimer's and was a 10-year difficult process. And it was very challenging for my whole family, everyone who knew her and loved her and thought of her as mom or sister, aunt or grandmother. And it was a difficult time. And that time, especially, I overextended myself. I went too far. I gave too much. And I was empty for a long time. And I had to figure out how to replenish the well. And I'm sure that is true of so many moms, especially, who play so many roles. I was thinking when I introduced you, you're a wife, you're a mother, you're a grandmother, you're a retired school teacher, you're a family life expert. All those things require something of us. And so I'm glad to hear that you say it's important to take care of ourselves.
I'm also interested in how your program can help school age children. That's where my heart goes. I know I've been in schools where they had a brain health program, and I know it makes a difference.
It does. I mean, we all hear all the time that sitting and listening to someone speak for an hour is way too long. And they actually say somewhere between 15 and 20 minutes you should have a break, right? And so that's not how most of our schools are designed. There's some many wonderful teachers who design their curriculum that way or their classroom that way, but they're not that many schools that design it to work that way so that kids get to blow off some steam a little bit or move around a little bit or make noise so that they can get their brains away from what they're doing and then back on what they're doing with greater focus and attention.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I have found that even in the best of circumstances, even if parents have excellent emotional intelligence, they are always sending loving messages to their children, and they're always kind, that still children experience negativity. They may be called names at school or have an altercation with someone in the neighborhood. And the reality is that parents are human beings. They're not able to maintain this wonderful, marvelous friend. It's not realistic. So, what I love is helping parents understand how they can help their child. I think, we want what's best for our children. We want them to be happy. We want them to grow up to be successful, to have high goals, to be able to take care of themselves, make their own decisions, contribute to society. And of course, to do all of those things, they need to believe in themselves. They need to have confidence. They need to have some resilience. And sometimes, especially these last few years, can you imagine what it's like growing up wearing a mask and going through a pandemic? They've really, I think, they have gone through more trauma than any other generation has before them. They've experienced things we haven't. I can't prepare my grandchildren for this. I didn't go through this. So any technique that helps a child develop those positive thought patterns and improves their brain health is going to benefit them.
Absolutely. And what people don't understand about brain health is that the brain's actual primary purpose is to control movement of the body. Yes, the brain can also build a building or design a bridge or create a painting or conduct a symphony. The brain can do all kinds of things, but its actual purpose, and it's been proven in many, many universities and medical schools, is to control movement of the body. So when we are, and let me substitute that with when children and our children are forced to sit still, to behave, not to move, to fall in line, to be rigid, it's against everything that the brain and the body wants to do. Doesn't mean they should get up and run around like crazy wild Indians, but it does mean that they should be able to move and feel some freedom, and maybe even be called upon to move every 20 or 30 minutes, at least for a couple minutes, so that they feel like, yeah, I am a human in a body. I am a child, and it is okay for me to move. I don't have to be sitting so still and nervous that I'm not going to be behaving well.
What I find heartbreaking, as a retired school teacher, is those situations where children are actually shamed and criticized for doing what is natural for them. I really feel sad when I see those situations where a child is being punished for being too active, for
Yeah.
not being able to sit still. And frankly, I was one of those children. It was extremely difficult for me to sit still. And I remember many an angry adult scolding me and just, what? So helping them, you know, this education, getting in schools, helping them, encouraging them. And I did. Towards the end of my career, I ended up in a residential treatment facility for youth at risk. And a lot of them had ADD. And so the classroom was designed so there was movement. They could go around the classroom. Maybe we would have a discussion for a while and then they would make a model. And we incorporated that. And the school was excellent at providing recreational therapy. They had a stable of 20 horses, and there were mountains nearby, and they went on hikes, and we went rappelling. And I had the fun of going rappelling for the first time in my life when I was 60 years old.
Oh, wow, that's great. I
It was
love it.
awesome. It was awesome.
That's terrific. And
So,
it's important, I think, to weave that kind of thing into learning, and whether that's at school or whether that's at home. Because, first of all, the last couple of years, as you point out, has during the pandemic, I mean, most children have been learning at home a lot of that time. And maybe they were directly interacting with their parents, and maybe not. Maybe they were interacting with a Zoom screen. But they definitely needed to have something to be able to move, because to sit like that day after day after day, and I've been aware of it more and more. I, like you, I was a discipline problem in school because I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I have a adult ADHD, and so for me to sit still is challenging. Now I can think, I can make great grades, I can do all my assignments, I can do everything I need to do because I'm good at focusing. But to sit and listen and sit and listen is so hard for me. So I would get straight A's on my report card, and then where they used to have comments, they'd write in, discipline problem, won't sit still, gets out of her chair, blah, blah, blah. So I identify exactly with what you're saying. And like you say, it was like a shaming thing that there was something. I was a bad kid because even though I made straight A's, I was a bad kid because I moved. I needed to move.
And the irony is, what other setting in your life will you be scolded for not sitting still, or expected to? It's an artificial setting, and when you get on the job, you don't sit. Well, I guess if you're at a computer, but anyway, yeah.
But even then, like, you get to kind of get up on your own and go talk to someone else or interact or go to a meeting or, I mean, there are things that can happen. You don't have to just like sit there in your cubicle in front of your screen all the time. And that's actually even one of the things that I tell people all the time, that if you do have a job that's seated at a computer, then you need to be responsible for getting up and moving around. Like, you will not perform as well. You will not think as well. You will not write as well if you don't give yourself like a brain break. Just 2 or 3 minutes is all it takes. And that usually includes a physical brain break because, again, the brain is in charge of movement. So the brain it doesn't want to just think. It wants to direct the body to move, to take a walk, to walk up the stairs and down, to wiggle around a little bit. The brain really wants that. So, well, you had mentioned to me that you have a process, which I'm fascinated about because I don't know about it, a process for helping children become healthier and happier and more resilient, and it apparently isn't really difficult, and it doesn't take all day long.
No, no. It's called the Golding Process, and it was developed and designed by a mother, and when you meant, I'm just a side note, when you mentioned your mother, I couldn't help but wonder, was that the impetus, the drive to develop Ageless Grace? Okay.
Absolutely. I always say it was my mother's last gift to me, was helping me realize that it wasn't crossword puzzles and word games and studying and taking courses that keeps your brain functional for the rest of your life, that it's actually physical movement, which is not what everybody has ever believed it to be until the last decade, when they proved that crossword puzzles and games are wonderful, and they will make you better at crossword puzzles and games, and you will have a good time, but it will not delay cognitive decline.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Joanne was a mother with a daughter with severe mental, physical challenges. Her IQ was only 45, and she was married to a psychologist, and she had done a lot of study about the brain and the mind, and so she devised this program of actually tapping into the neuroplasticity of the brain and knowing that the brain can make changes. Just spending a few minutes every day feeding positive, just like positive affirmations, just putting some positivity. Now, she found the most effective time was shortly after her daughter had gone to sleep. She studied the sleep patterns, the brainwave activity, and she knew exactly the range that needed to be used to for the subconscious mind to accept these suggestions and to integrate them and to actually make it part of the belief system. And she saw miraculous results with her daughter,
Wow.
who is now an adult living independently on her own and doing just fine, doing very well. And so Joanne went on to share that Joan shared this with other parents and taught this and started the Golding process. She's since retired, but the work is being carried on by Carrie Burley, and it's a powerful tool to help children feel more confidence, to help them feel also if they struggle with autism or ADHD, it also helps them, it effectively changes behavior because they feel confident, they feel loved, they feel validated. It's actually a very effective way for parents to express unconditional love. And unconditional love is the key in parenting. I think you've heard the quote that the doctor recommended love is the best treatment in raising children. And the question is, well, what if it doesn't work? And his answer is increase the dose.
I love
And
that.
it really is true. When children feel that they are unconditionally loved, they heal from all those wounds. And my experience has also been that when a child acts out, they're hurting inside. They don't like themselves. And you need to heal that hurt. You can't just scold them and say, okay, we're going to change your behavior. We'll give you a lollipop every time you do what we want. You need to heal the wound. And the Golding process is a brilliant way to do it.
So how does it work? Are the affirmations preset? Does each parent?
There is a very exact process that, in fact, that's part of the success is the consistency. Parents would need to be willing to commit to do this every night for 12 weeks, following a precise procedure and a definite formula process.
And do
And
they
some
do
words
it
I use.
while the child is still awake or right after the child goes to sleep?
After they're asleep
I love
and
this.
they're in that, you know, beta are levels of brainwave activity. Beta, that's where we are right now, Denise. We're alert, we're aware, we're talking to each other. If we did some yoga or meditation and we started to relax, that activity level would go down to alpha. And then we really, you really get into that long, boring lecture. It drops down even lower into delta when we're absolutely sound, that sound, dreamless sleep. That's the lowest level, theta. So the idea is in between that alpha delta range. That's where you want. That's where it's most effective.
And the parent just repeat certain affirmations and roughly how is it one affirmation different every night or several different
It's the
affirmations?
same. It's the
Oh.
same, and it's repeated, and it doesn't take long. It only needs to take a few minutes, and it can just be part of the routine. They also need, if they're talking like I'm talking to you now, that's a faster speed than that level of brainwave activity can deal with. So they would need to slow down their speech, but they don't need to whisper. They just talk in there and just fitting in with that what's happening in their child's brain at that time. But there have been, in the 40 years since Joan established this Golding Institute, there have been many success stories of children who actually, if they had those negative mental programs, comparing the brain to a computer, and you have those programs running and belief systems. Those programs control what you do. My favorite example is, on the conscious level, you may decide, I want to improve my health. I'm going to give up sweets. I'm not eating sweets anymore. And the next thing you know, you're eating a donut. Because on the subconscious level, you have, this is a habit. Sugar makes me feel good. I'm not giving up my sugar.
Right.
So it's rewriting those programs. If you had a faulty program on your computer, a virus, you'd want to replace it with a more effective program. And
That
that's what this does.
is a very clear analogy. I appreciate that. Um, so a question is, this is obviously created to work with children, and it helps the health of the overall family as well as the child, obviously. And does it work with adults? I mean, would it be possible, do you think, to do the same thing? Like if I said to my husband, "Gee, I'd like you to do this for me when I fall asleep at night and say these words to me and help reprogram my brain." I mean, do you think it would work on adults, or are we too far gone?
I have heard of a recommendation that you have your spouse, that you write out the affirmation. It's what you want to believe, do, and then have your spouse read it to you or record it, and then listen to that recording as you're falling asleep. First, you're hearing the voice of the person you love the most, and then there's power in words.
Oh, yeah.
There's energy. You can feel it. There are some words that just inspire you, that just, I just motivate you to do your best. And then there are other words that can really shut you down. Names or labels that someone can throw at you that can just drain the energy right out of you. And that's another thing parents need to be aware of, is the words they use. Children are very literal. You may think it's funny to tease them about their big ears, but that could be the start of a mental program that I'm not good enough. I look goofy. I don't look right.
That's so true. And one of the things, in addition to teaching the Ageless Grace program, I teach a dance movement, martial arts, healing arts technique called Nia. And it's dancing. I mean, you're moving through the room, you're doing certain steps and combinations and things. And the good thing about it is that there's no right or wrong, meaning I don't want everybody to do exactly what I'm doing. I want them to do their version that fits with their body, because every body literally is different. Some bodies have one shoulder that doesn't work as well, and some bodies have really strong cores, and some bodies have a knee that doesn't work quite as well as the other knee. So we're all different, and so it's always interesting to me how in most movement and dance and fitness classes, the goal is to get everybody doing the same thing, whereas this technique, Nia technique, is just the opposite. I always say, I know I've succeeded if I look at it and everybody's doing something a little bit different. It's similar to what I'm doing, it's close, but we're all doing something a little bit different. Someone's reaching higher, someone's a little lower, someone's opening their hands, someone's closing their hands. It's all a little different. And so I feel like that's true. It's what you're talking about right now, that we are unique, we are different, and we have programmed thoughts. And I know so many times people come to me and say, I've heard your class is so much fun, but I'm nervous to come because I don't have any rhythm, or because I can't dance, or because I'm afraid I'll look foolish doing Ageless Grace, or I don't want to, I don't, are people going to laugh at me? And that's common. And these are grown-ups, these are adults, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80
Grown
years
up hang
old.
ups.
Yeah, and they have these things that have been programmed into them somewhere that said they look clumsy when they dance, or or they have been laughed at and they're nervous about being laughed at. It's fascinating how that goes with us through our entire lives.
Now, what you were talking about is excellent advice for parents. Sometimes they have a preconceived notion about what their child is supposed to do and at what age. They look at these milestones. They may be comparing their children with the neighbors, and then they start worrying. But if they took the approach you do, that each child is going to be different, let them dance their own dance.
Yes.
Do it, and the parents are providing the framework. Parents definitely need to be the leaders in the home, but they're providing the framework of teaching values such as honesty, treating others with kindness, always doing your best. And they have that framework, and then they're letting their children develop into the unique human beings they are and fill in all the rest.
Absolutely. I think that's part of the genius of children, is the fact that they do develop in their own ways. Even being born, I love hearing different moms say, she was 14 days early and she was not going to wait any longer, or oh, he was almost a month late, and that's just the way he wanted to be, that's how he wanted to come into the world. And I think about that we don't have any control over that so much, although these days a lot of people do things like induced labor or whatever. But the reality is, the child has its own rhythm and its own pace, whether that's being born, or how soon they start to walk, or when they're ready to talk. I've heard stories, and I know you probably know them, of children that, just didn't talk. And then when they finally talked, it was like a full sentence. They just talked.
Yes.
They didn't say mama, dada. They just said, like, hey, mom, would you get me a glass of water? It's like, oh, okay.
Exactly, exactly. They need their own pace, and trying to put them on a time schedule. Now, earlier when you were talking about schools, one of the things I like to teach parents is how to advocate for their child to the school system, not in an abrasive, aggressive way, but people respond more to appreciation than criticism. So, starting from a place of appreciation, and then bringing the focus, if when the school personnel and the parents are all focused on what is in the best interest of this child, how can we help them benefit, reach their potential, get the best education? When the focus is on the best interest of the child, you get the adult egos out of the way. Then parents can point out, I think asking him to sit for 45 minutes isn't going to work for him. It really isn't best for him. He really, and this is what I learned about it. This is what I learned from Ageless Grace. And coming with their perspective as the one who knows the child best, and also has a lifelong commitment to this child. And then the school district is explaining, well, this is what we can provide. If they learn how to build that rapport, that synergistic team, they can get the best education for their children, and they can make sure nobody is asking their child to sit for 45 minutes.
I love that you're giving that message to parents everywhere, because that's an important thing to understand, that you don't have to just sit and be quiet. You can advocate for your child, and that's actually true of most things. It pays to have an advocate when you or your loved one is going through some kind of medical condition.
Yes.
When my mom was in the state of Alzheimer's, I mean, she couldn't advocate for herself. And I realized right away how important it was for someone to be saying, no, she doesn't need to be on 17 medications, and she doesn't need to be, so sedated that she doesn't know what's going on in the world. She still has a lot of life in her. And so I realized that I think a lot of people bow to what they perceive as authority. And that could
Exactly.
be the authority of the teacher, the authority of the principal or the school system, the authority of the doctor. And because most of us in our generation, we grew up to respect authority, certainly. However, I think maybe, just maybe, we grew up to respect authority a little too much, as opposed to we weren't even questioning authority. That we could, as you say, come from a point of view of gratitude and kindness and acceptance of many things and gratefulness for what's being done, and you can still advocate for your child.
Remember that you, as a family member, know them better, have the deepest commitment, and are more keenly aware of what they need. So I think, yeah, hold on to that. Parents, family members, when they're caring for, as you were for your mother, just remember that this is your sacred charge, that this is, yeah, your responsibility, your calling, whatever you want to call, however you want to, whatever term you want to use, but it's on you to advocate for this person that you love. And
Powerful.
I even remind parents, the local public school is nice and convenient, but it isn't your only option anymore. We have more charter schools, more private schools. We even have parent co-ops. So don't, get your child in the best educational setting possible for them.
And that's wonderful advice, because again, there is that process of just kind of going along. The school system says your child's supposed to start school on this date. Well, is that the right school for your child? Again, every child is different. Every human being is
Right.
different. Some children are very outgoing, and some children are very shy, and some children thrive in a small group, and some children love to have a crowd and an audience and a lot of people around them. It's an important thing to be aware of, that you have choices all the time about the quality of your life. That's what this show is about, that you have choices. You always have choices. Now, there are some things we can't control. There are many things in life we can't control. However, I always think that what I put into my mouth, what I think, what feeds me personally, how I interact with others, how I interact with my family, again, mind, body, spirit, emotions, those are my decisions. I can make decisions about that, regardless of whatever else is in my life: job, career, geographic location, income, demographics. I might not be able to control, but my mind, my body, my spirit, my emotions, I'm the one who has the influence, and I either make choices and advocate for myself, which also means I'm advocating for my loved ones. As you said at the very beginning, put my own oxygen mask on first, and I can just allow circumstances to advocate for me. Oh, this is the way it is, and there's nothing I can do about it. Oh, that's the way my child is, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Denise.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, I could talk to you on and on and on. It's such a fascinating topic, to understand our own responsibilities, and I say that in a kind way, our honor, our gift that we've been given to be able to make
Opportunity.
choices in charge of our family and for our family's well-being and good and for the grace in our family life. So I always like to end with showing a tool from the Ageless Grace program. And often I go back and I sit in that chair, but tonight I'm actually going to stay up fairly close because the basis of Ageless Grace, and Emmalou and I were talking about this actually before we began the show, is actually play. That's what it's based on. Because the thing that changes our brains the most, that keeps our brain the most healthy, which ultimately keeps our body the most healthy, is playing. And what do I mean by playing? I don't just mean doing a game, I mean taking a little risk, being willing to look a little silly, being willing to say, gee, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to try to figure out how to do it. Being able to say, gosh, I was terrible at that, and it made me laugh. Because that is what causes us to fire neurons in our brain. That's what is a brain cell. That's what causes us to change our brain, as you were talking about the whole neuroplasticity idea. How do we change attitudes and beliefs? Well, we change them the same way we change any wiring in our brain, and that is by doing something new or different than we've ever done before. And so physically, it's also true. If I do the same thing over and over, let's say I'm a really good tennis player, well, I'm going to be great at tennis. And I'm going to have to stop thinking about it so much because I'm so good at it, I don't have to think about everything. But if I then say, you know what, I think I'm going to learn how to play the ukulele, well, then it's all of a sudden like, oh, I'm terrible at this and I don't know where to put my hands. And my brain is constantly firing. So I am going to show you a tool that we can do that because this program is for anyone with a brain, including children. And we actually have a program called Forever Fit For, and those are the numbers for Forever Fit For Kids. And it's being taught in schools, especially elementary schools, because those kids jump right in and they realize how fun this is, and they haven't gotten to the place where they're so self-conscious about what they're doing. So we're going to do something. One of the tools is called Zoology. We typically do it to music, but I've decided I don't want to put music on while we do this one today. It's about acting out as if you were different kinds of animals. So sounds like a kid's game, right? Well, it's for anyone. George Bernard Shaw said, we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. So I'm going to scoot back just a little bit, and I am going to invite you to go along with me, Emmalou, and we're going to pretend we could be farm animals, we could be zoo animals, we could be animals in Africa, we could be animals anywhere. So let's start off and let's be a lion and literally like use your claws, lift your feet and your paws, and maybe you want to even make some sort of growling noises like and then as we're doing this, we're starting to think, well, what else does a lion do? Well, maybe it runs really fast. They can be pretty quick. So use your legs and your arms and your shoulders and run really, really quickly. And then, of course, lions also have big, long, beautiful tails. And you could swish your like swish your tail and let it go from side to side as some big cat would do. And as you're doing this, you're thinking, and what else does a lion do? Well, a lion has a big mane if it's a male. So toss your mane, like toss your head and toss it and let it sort of flow in the air, right? And then I have personally seen lions in Africa laying in the grass like rolling and stretching and just enjoying life. When my dog does this, I call it the happy dog. Well, this is the happy lion, just rolling and stretching and enjoying the sun and the warm weather. And then, of course, they have big paws and they make big footprints in the dirt and the dust. And they can also claw, of course, like we did at the very beginning. So we might do this tool and act about lions and what they might do for 4 or 5 minutes. Or we might play a song and we might do a lion for just a minute, and then do a hippopotamus for a minute, and then do a giraffe for a minute. But you see how it's activating the brain, and you can see why kids would love this. And it's just a break. Some teachers have told me that they use Zoology, which was the name of that tool, for geography. And they'll say, we're getting ready to study Montana, so let's do the animals that you might find in Montana. So there are so many ways to use this tool, and I hope that gave you just a little bit of movement after we've been sitting here and talking for a while, and also gave you an idea how to blow off some steam, and maybe do this with your family. How much fun it is for everybody to sit in a chair, because that's the idea. The brain has to figure out, how would you do this sitting down? We all know how to get in the floor and crawl around like a lion, but do we know how to sit in a chair and figure out how to do it? So it's an idea you can use with your families, with your mom, with your friends, and blow off a little steam yourself. So I love to close this way and remind you what Emmalou and I have been talking about, that it's never too late to begin making choices to create the life that you want to live. And I always like to say, what if you were to do a little bit of sleep talk yourself, and write down some of those affirmations that might change the thought processes that are in your subconscious brain or unconscious brain, or record it so that you can hear your voice or a family member's voice. Or what if you were to do that for your child when they go to sleep? I think we would change the world. So I would like to remind you that if you want to know more about Ageless Grace, you can go to agelessgrace.com, and there are all kinds of handouts and free things, and there are also products that you can buy, like DVDs and playbooks. And I want to remind you that I am not the only show host here. Tell us, Emmalou, the day and time of your show and the name of your show.
The name of my show is Healing Your Families, and I'm on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Pacific time.
Awesome. And so that's 6 p.m. Eastern time, if there's anybody here. And you'll have to do the rest of the math yourself if you live somewhere else. So thank you so much for being here, Emmalou. I really appreciate having you, and it's been a wonderful conversation.
It has indeed. Thank you, Denise.
Thanks for joining us on Living a Graceful Life.